Hello, welcome back to the channel. Back indoors for a little bit on this video, and something that I've been asked quite a few times about, and that is what is draining my car battery. So you probably saw a while back I did a review on one of these C-Tech battery charger, and people are asking, why is my battery going flat after a few days? Well, we're going to try and find out. So there's a few ways of finding out how your car battery is going flat after a few days. Obviously, the situation that everyone's in at the moment, cars aren't getting used as much. A lot of people are finding the car batteries, I'll put you up there, the car batteries are going flat. And one of the main things is because there's something called parasitic draw. There's something stealing power that it shouldn't be. When a car is locked, it should only use a very, very small amount of power just to keep things like the key fob remote receiver working, the alarm system. There's also a little bit goes to the radio, so it stores all of your programs and your presets, things like that, but there shouldn't be very much getting drawn out. So what we do need to do this is a multimeter. Now, you can get all sorts of different types of multimeters. This one, it's pretty old now. I mean, I've had this probably since I was pretty young, actually, thinking about it. So this has got to be about 30 years old. But if you get a half decent meter, that's all you need. So what this one can do, and unfortunately this camera's not great at close-up shots, but I'll try. What this can do is it's got a section for voltage, and you've got different values, 4 volts, 40, 400, 600 volts. It can switch between AC and DC. So for cars, we need DC, direct current. AC typically is what comes out of your wall sockets, your mains, that kind of stuff. So DC, what it's also got is it's got amps. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you a few ways of measuring your parasitic draw so that you can try a few different ones. So if one doesn't quite give you the results or you're not sure, you've got a few different ways you can check them out. But what you do need is a multimeter, and this one, like I say, it's an older one, but generally anything that can do current and voltage is what you want. So I'm going to show you a few little basics first. So the first obvious one is, you'll see there's 3 sockets along the bottom here. If I take the probes out, so we've got common in the middle, we've got volts and ohms on this one, and we've got 10 amps on this one. So normally, you saw I had before, we have common in there, and for measuring voltage we just put it into the volt section like that, and we can measure volts. I'll come to the 10 amp current testing later because we'll be doing that on the car. But so all we need to do is turn this round to volts, and on mine what you do is you set it above the voltage you're going to measure. So the camera's not going to focus on that very well, but that says 40 because I'm going to be measuring 12 volts car battery voltage. So you want something like that. And then what we can do, get the probes, and I'm going to show you on this old battery here. All we do, you can see this side's red, red probe, this side's black, black probe, put that on, and on the meter we get a voltage reading. Now you can see this battery, there's a reason it's sat on my bench, it's pretty much dead. 7 volts that's reading. This is supposed to be a 12 volt battery, so this is a good indicator. If you've got a car battery, and a car battery is supposed to be around 12 volts, if it's 10 volts, it's a bad sign. It's that the battery is not doing too good. So there we go. So that's very basic voltage testing. So I think what we'll do is we'll head out to the car, and I'll show you a little test on the car first of all to see what you've got. So here we are on the car. The battery connect up. So all I've done is opened the bonnet and just lift the little flap over, and you can see the battery terminals. Now your car depends on how easy it is to get at this, but all we're wanting for this quick test is to do a voltage check. So the meter is set on DC, and on mine it's set in the 40 range. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the voltage whilst the car's sat here doing nothing. So black onto the minus, or the black side on the car battery, red or plus side, and there we go. So this car is sat at 13.3 volts, which is its idle. Now this is a 12 volt battery, so anything really above 12 volts is good, and with the car sat, 13 volts is excellent. That means this battery is in great condition, and I'd expect it to, because the battery's basically just over a year old in my case. So that's the kind of voltage you want. Now again, if your voltage is below 11 or 10 volts, then that's showing that the battery is really weak, because whilst the car's sat here doing nothing, it's not pulling any power really. The car might have the interior lights on because I've just unlocked it, but other than that, it's not doing a lot. And if the voltage drops, then it generally means that something is weakening the battery. Something is making the battery work hard whilst it shouldn't be. So I'm going to show you bit by bit how to find out what is taking the power away from your battery. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the battery. So in this case, I'm just going to take the negative lead off. Very quick and simple. 10mm. Loosen the nut, then lift the terminal off like so. So the car is now disconnected. I'm just trying to put that out of the way. I don't want it touching the negative terminal. So the car's completely disconnected now. So the next thing that we do is we check the battery again, and we look for the voltage that the battery is showing. So again, black to minus, red to plus, and you'll see again we're around about the same voltage, and that's good news. So that means that my battery, again, it's in good condition and the car's not drawing too much from it. Now if you see your battery suddenly jump up to 12 volts and it was down 10, 11 before, then it may just be that something's drawing power or the battery's getting weak. So put it on a battery charger overnight and see what you get. So in this case, it looks okay. So we're now going to go on and work out how much power the car draws when it's sat, not running or doing anything. So let's get on to that part. For this part, we're going to use the current part. So this is where that 10 amp port comes in. We're going to move the red probe into the 10 amp, and we're going to turn the dial to the 10 amp position. So what this is going to let me do, this is going to let me test up to 10 amps of power draw across the probes. So if you remember before, I disconnected the negative lead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put one probe onto the negative lead like this, make a good connection, hold it nice and firmly like that, and then this probe I'm going to put on the negative lead of the battery. Now be aware there might be a little spark when you do this, but just do it positively and put it in and hold it there, and look at what current is being drawn. Now what you can see is the initial draw is my central locking triggering. Now what you've got to be careful of, that does take quite a bit of power. But now you'll see that it's settled down and it's 0.3 amps. So that's the car idle. Now normally a lot of cars, what they do is they go into an idle state straight after locking, unlocking, all things being connected, disconnected like this. And then they drop down to a very low sleeping state. And this is where the computer almost completely shuts down, all the interior lights. The electronics go into a deep sleep mode, and you can actually see that has just happened. First of all, it went down to 0.1, and now if you look at that, 0.05 amps. So that is 500 milliamps. And that's all this car is drawing whilst it's sat doing nothing. And that is excellent, really, because 500 milliamps would take a very long time to drain such a big car battery like this. And that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for the lowest current you can in this state. So if that was higher, if it was an amp or half an amp, that's way too high to be sat with idle current when really the car is sleeping. So the first thing to check for when you're doing this test, you can see it's sat quite happily, it's not moving. So the first thing you want to check for, make sure none of the interior lights are staying on, doors are all shut properly, all that sort of thing. Make sure that everything is set as you would leave it overnight. If you can, whilst you've got this connected, lock the doors as though the car was going to get left. And you can see the voltage, the current drops right down, and that's what we want. So I don't think there's any problem with this car. In fact, I know that there's no problem with this car because it doesn't draw current when it's not being used. The battery stays fine, so I'm not too bothered about that, actually. So what I am going to do though is assume that there's a problem, and I'm going to show you how to test and find what it is that's taking that draw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the battery back up again, and I'll show you that. So I'm doing this job on my Vauxhall Zafira. You can see there's a fuse box at the front here. Let's just take the cover off. So what you're looking for is one of the fuse boxes. Now this car has a couple of fuse boxes. Most modern cars have several fuse boxes, so you might need to search for a couple of them. When you take the lid off, first thing you want to do, have a quick look underneath. Sometimes there's a diagram on here of the fuses. This one doesn't. Sometimes it has it labelled on the fuses themselves what they are. Again, this one doesn't. So what we're looking at here, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the fuse box here, because there's a few important things. First of all, these are relays. These typically, and I'm saying typically because there are different types, some of them are fuses, but generally these are not fuses. They don't have anything important in what we're looking at today. What we are looking at are these little things here. These are fuses, and in this case this car has two types of fuse in this fuse box. We have this type of fuse, which are the larger square fuses, and actually what I'll do is I'll take that fuse out and I'll show you. And that's the fuse, and you can see on the top 20, that's a 20 amp fuse, and actually camera probably won't show it, but you can actually see the metal wire inside it, so I can see that the wire is intact and fine. So that's one of our fuses there. So I'm going to put that back in again. Something else to be aware of, you'll see there's quite a few gaps. Certain fuses aren't filled in. That's quite normal. Those are for different things. So for example, my car doesn't have heated seats. Chances are one of these will be for heated seats. So to know what's what, you want to get your manual and have a look through the manual. It'll tell you what each of the fuses mean and the sizes. So checking the manual on this is my Vauxhall Zafira. Here we have the list of all the fuses and a list of all the descriptions. So what we're going to do is we're going to work our way through the fuses and look for things that could be draining power. Now this is when the car's turned off, so looking up things like ABS, radiator fans, that's not much point. They're not going to be drawing power when the car is sat not running. But things like central locking systems and things like that are quite important to look for. So looking at our diagram, going down here, central locking system is fuse number 7, which is this fuse here. So that would be a good one to test and see whether that is constantly drawing power. If it is, then that could be indicating that you've got a problem with one of the solenoids or there's some sort of draw. So I'm going to show you how to test and see if that one is drawing power. So the first thing we do is remove the fuse. We know that the fuse is good, we can see that the fuse is good. Then we're going to bring our multimeter back in again. And the multimeter is still set on current. We've got it on our 10 amp setting, which is what we want. And then what we're going to do, and you need a meter that's got prongs like this. What we're going to do is we're going to put one prong in one side and one in the other, and this is where the fuse would normally go, and put them in. Now, with this being central locking, we've got 0, which is correct. The central locking shouldn't be drawing power whilst the car is sat not having the central locking activated. So that's good. That's a pass. We know that that's not drawing power. If that showed an amount and it was a high number, then we'd need to take a further look into that. But I think that one shows that that's okay. Going through the list, you've got things like diagnostics, plug, instruments. You want to work your way through all of these really. Anything that looks like it could be something that is important, that could be drawing power whilst idle. Now, a lot of cars have things like IOD fuses, electronics, things like that. Infotainment system, so that's your radio, your amplifier, things like that. Those are very common high draw, so those are good ones to check. Now in this fuse box, 35 is our infotainment system, and it's this big 20 amp fuse here, because speakers and sound systems can draw a lot of power. However, whilst the car's sat doing nothing, that shouldn't be drawing very much power at all. There should just be a little bit of voltage, which is what the radio uses to save station presets, all that kind of thing. So that's definitely another one to check. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take that out. It can be a bit tricky to get out these. Just take your time, gently rock it backwards and forwards. And the fuse will come out eventually. If you need to, use a pair of pliers, but do it carefully. You don't want to damage the fuses when you take them out. So that's our fuse. Again, we bring our meter in. Do it so you can see what the meter shows. Something like that. And then we put the two probes into where the fuse is, and there you can see we do have a slight draw. I've just moved the probe, but you do have a slight draw, which is what you'd expect. That's the radio pulling a little bit of power so that it can save its stations, things like that. Again, if that was a high value, that could be a problem, and it could indicate that's where you need to be looking. But again, in my case, I know that mine is working very happily and doesn't have any problems. So I'm going to put that fuse back in again. The thing is, car designers don't make this easy for us. So again, I'm in the Zafira, and according to the manual, there is a rear electrical centre. So having a look down here, we can see we've got a panel. And inside this panel, we've got another fuse box. Now again, you need to use your manual to find out what the fuses are for. But again, the same testing principle applies. Generally, I wouldn't be looking at the big fuses like this. It's these smaller fuses that are the key that you want to look for. Now, helpfully, this one's actually got a little fuse removal tool, if you look. That's a great little invention, isn't it? So if you haven't got one of those, it might be worth investing. There'll only be a few pennies on eBay or something like that, won't they? But that's quite a nice add-on. Thanks for that, Vauxhall. That's useful. But you can see this is another one that you should test and see if you're getting draw whilst in the back of the car. Now actually this one, you'll see I've actually done a modification, because I added a boot light, or an extra boot light, onto this one, and I did it exactly by doing this trick. What I did is I looked and I tested what was getting power and what got powered when the boot lid was opened, and by doing that you can work out what wires you can tap into. But that's on another video anyway. I'll link it in the description. And there you have it, really. That's all you need to be doing. You need to be using a meter like this, checking for current and working your way through some of the common fuses. So like I say, things like entertainment system, IOD, central locking, things like that. Check for the fuses and see what current is being drawn. If you've got a high current, if your battery's going flat after a couple of days, chances are one of those are drawing too much power when they shouldn't be. Something I didn't mention before as well, fuses come in lots of different shapes and sizes. These are the older, larger types of fuse, but it's the same principle again. Different sizes printed on them, and again, remove them, put the meter across, and remember, whenever you put the meter across, make sure you're testing current, and it's set to current, and the probe is in the correct port on your meter. It is very important that you don't short things out either in your meter or in the car. That is very important to remember. If you're not sure, read the manual for these. There's loads of tutorials on how to use multimeters effectively as well online, so there's tons of information out there. There we go, and that's all for the video this time. Hope you've enjoyed that. Very quick how-to on it. There's a lot more information out there on how to do justice to all of this, but there's a very quick one on checking current, idle, and your draw when you're not using the car. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, pop a comment down the bottom if this has helped you out, and don't forget to check out the other videos as well. Battery chargers, car repairs, all that kind of stuff. Have a look and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. And thank you for watching.